Hi, and thanks for joining us on this episode of Constructive Conversations, a podcast where we aim to bridge the gap in communications between contractors and customers. So, joining us today is Elizabeth Lecerf from Safety Comply. Elizabeth, can you tell us some more about your company and what you do?
Yeah, thank you for having me. My company, Safety Comply, is a fractional health and safety service. And so we help smaller trades and construction companies manage the administration of their health and safety program.
Okay, great. So, give me some background. How did you get into that
Uh,
and get into starting your own company?
yeah, so I've been in the industry for just over 8 years now. And I've worked in various situations, whether I was an in-house health and safety advisor for a large single trade. I've also worked for a general contractor in the commercial industry. And so in that capacity, I've worked with a lot of different trades, different sizes of their companies as well. And I just sort of realized that there was this need for some of the smaller contractors to develop their health and safety programs and have somebody sort of coaching them along. But they just weren't at the place where it was necessary or possible to have somebody on staff full time. And, also a lot of owners, I'm sure you know, are trying to take on a lot of tasks themselves, and there's only so many hours in the day. And so it's able to kind of take that off of their plate so they can focus on what they're passionate about, what they enjoy doing, but they know that their safety is taken care of as well.
Cool. So, what was that process like discovering that gap? So, you work for these larger firms, and sort of what led you to identify that gap?
Working for the general contractor, especially when our clients were requiring more detail in our safety planning, we would have to follow up with our trades and get more specific safe operating procedures or their plans for the job. They're the experts in what they do. So my personal approach is I don't like to tell them how to do it from a book. So I try to collaborate that with them as much as possible and give them the resources that I have to help them formalize or essentially write down their plans because contractors and trades workers are in the industry because they're really good with their hands. And so if I can help kind of convert that to the administration side and the document, it was really valuable. And so working with them from the general contractor position, I just saw that a lot of them could benefit from it and gain access to more work opportunities if they had that resource available
I
to
see.
them.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so in your interactions with the smaller companies, you realized a lot of these companies don't have the right systems in place when it comes to safety.
Yeah, and not that they even didn't have the right systems, but that they found it very overwhelming and stressful. And so when I was able to work with them with, sort of the existing kind of process that I have and approach and sort of take that ease, like give them some ease with it rather than safety being like a stressful piece or an added layer to the work that they do. It just sort of, I liked to see that it was sort of neutralized for them. So yeah, just taking the stress and frustration away from it because it's just not something that they're excited about doing or something that's natural for them. And so yeah, being able to just put them at ease and get what they need in place as well is just really rewarding. And I was like, this is something that a lot of people could benefit from in the trade industry.
That sounds very helpful to take the stress out of that, especially for a small business owner.
Yeah.
So, what's like your personal passion that got you to start your own company and go out and do this on your own?
So the last company that I was in, my role was more than just health and safety, and so I did have a lot of kind of exposure to different parts of business. And I think part of what excited me is that I enjoyed that. I enjoyed, having some executive functions and being able to like strategically plan for the business. I really liked that piece. But I also enjoy, and I've believed this for a long time, that all departments essentially, whether you have a full department or it's all one person or two people, function together. So whether it's your marketing or your operations or your accounting or your health and safety, they all impact one another in some way, and when they can be cohesive, it's really beneficial. So I like being able to see, how I can incorporate what I do with the other facets of people's businesses.
Right, and so that becomes like part of that whole that creates for a smoothly operating business.
Absolutely, yeah. I think when different again, departments essentially, or roles, can collaborate and see how they impact one another and work together, it creates a smoother business as a whole, rather than seeing things as separate entities and different people are only responsible for that component of the business. When they can function together, I think it's more effective for the bigger picture.
Yeah, absolutely. If people aren't sort of taking sides saying, oh, I'm just responsible for my section, everybody sort of takes responsibility for the whole thing, and outcomes are definitely better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that's very common with safety, like, oh, that's the safety person's role, or that's for safety to do, which, for sure we have our education and our background, and we're able to provide that resource. But the way that I like to think about it is, accounting doesn't make the purchases for you, but they help you utilize the systems and make sure that there's all the checks and balances in place. So that's sort of how I try to frame it, so that people can understand that, yeah, I can give you, the procedures, or I can help you document things or create systems, but I'm not going to be out there, filling out the forms or performing the work that's impacted by the safety plan. So it's important to kind of have a good understanding and collaborate on that from their perspective as well.
Okay, awesome. So what's the typical customer you work with? Like, what's your typical company? What's the size? What are they doing?
Yeah. Really, like, depending on the company, I think for sure the smaller business is where I'm finding a lot of value, because they're likely getting started, or they're, don't have as many people in place that can help manage all the different tasks. But really what's more important to me is a company that's like looking to grow, looking to, gain more work, potentially, new revenue opportunities, because we're seeing more and more that your health and safety program is a requirement to, bid for jobs or qualify for work with certain clients and customers, which I think is really important, but there is sort of a gap in, the ability for contractors to know what to do and how to do it. And so wanting to grow is a key component for somebody that I want to work with. Ideal size would be really like anybody, maybe 3 to 20 or 30 employees, again, just depending on what they're looking for in the future, and open to like any construction and trade industry, or, scope of work. Yeah, there's a lot of variety out there, but the process that I have really applies to any trade.
Okay, great. So any trade, and particularly you look for companies that are wanting to grow. Because getting the systems in place now and sort of getting that organized is going to enable their growth, is going to make it easier for them to grow?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it will make it easier, and sort of putting that in the front end, as with any sort of new process, or like, implementing things in business, the earlier you can adopt it, the smoother it is as you grow. But I think the other piece with working with a company or business owners that are looking to grow is that they value what health and safety brings, and they value the time that it's going to take, and they understand what the input is going to be for them, because again, it's not just like me coming in and giving them these processes and doing it for them. Everybody on the team, especially from the top down, needs to be on board with it and really integrate themselves into it. So it's just that if they're looking to grow, they're already like dedicated to the process, if that makes sense.
Right, so there's more buy-in,
Yeah.
because they recognize that they're going to need that. Like, that's a step as part of their growth, as opposed to somebody who's, okay, I'm a one-man operation with a helper, and we've been doing things the same way for 10 years. Why should we change?
Exactly, right? And like, for sure, everybody knows that you need health and safety, and you need to be, working safe and making sure that you're abiding by legislation. But it's not that that's not enough of a reason. It's just, to me, it's not always like a forward-thinking reason. It's not necessarily like the most exciting thing for me to come in and be like, you need me because you have to, right? Like, it's not fun to go at it that way. I enjoy it a lot more when it's like, here's the opportunities that will be open for you if we can refine some of these processes and make your health and safety process a little bit more manageable and efficient for your for your team. That's a more enjoyable approach for me. So that's what I lean towards, rather than sort of a fear-mongering
that's
kind of intense perspective. That's not really my style.
I'm sure the people you work with appreciate that too.
I hope so.
So when you mentioned like the opportunities, so it opens more opportunities for the business. What do those look like?
I know on the commercial side for sure, it's just the actual ability to bid on bigger projects. A lot of things like working with different public entities. You may not even qualify to submit a bid if you don't have certain credentials, or you would don't have documentation to submit that you have a working health and safety program. But then the other thing that I like to emphasize is, again, coming back to that integrating all components of your business together, is that if you have a company, let's say you're a homeowner or somebody that's hiring, Calgary Custom Concepts, and you're able to kind of identify that we have this, robust health and safety program, and it's really a high priority for us, and we pay attention to the detail, and these are the things that you need to be aware of. It also identifies to the client that you have a high attention to detail and really good work ethic, because you're willing to go above and beyond and sort of detail all of the health and safety side. And if you think about it, that translates to your quality of work and your professionalism. So it just is a full package, and it just sort of creates like a really positive picture of the company. And then it also translates to how the employees work there, right? If they feel cared for and they feel valued, well, they're going to show that in their work and their work ethic and their professionalism towards everybody. And I just think that it's a good way to kind of essentially filter out if someone's not willing to go to that length of having a documented health and safety program. It just shows a difference, in my opinion, the quality of work and the willingness to put in the detail.
Yeah, so from the customer perspective, if a company is willing, if they're organized enough and they care enough to have a safety program, then that probably applies to the other aspects of how they perform the work. And then from the employee standpoint, you're saying that the employees feel cared for, then they're gonna care more about their work, and the company will be happier to come into work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And be more productive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think why that happens is when it comes to, everybody, I'm sure you've heard about workplace culture, and a lot of the times I hear safety culture kind of separated from that, but if you keep it in the same box, it's going to have even more positive effects. And when I think of culture, I think of how people feel about the place that they work and how they feel about the leadership there. And if they believe that the leadership truly cares about them and about the quality of the work conditions and things like that, then they believe in the leadership. So it just creates this sort of positive environment and positive approach to things, and knowing that everybody is on board and on the same page.
Nice. So going back to the customer perspective, so when someone's, say they're looking for a small residential company, and you said they can use that sort of to filter out, so what should they look for?
That's a great question.
They're going to use that as a filter.
Yeah, if the company doesn't necessarily have a core certification or something that they have a logo or a qualification advertised, it's just as simple as to ask, do you have any health and safety requirements that I should be aware of as the homeowner, right? Because something that contractors and, companies are responsible for is not just the health and safety of their employees, but any sort of third parties that are impacted. So, for example, if you're on a customer's home, they need to be made aware of any sort of risks that they could be exposed to. And so that's just a really easy question, and it's not overly complicated. You don't have to get bogged down with what kind of training certificates they need, or all the acronyms, because I know there's a lot of acronyms in every industry, and health and safety is not immune to that. Yeah. So just asking if there's any risks that they're exposed to as homeowners that they should be aware of. And then you can kind of go from there depending on the answer that you're given, and the scope of work that maybe you're having. If they say, nothing, and you're like, well, I feel like there's probably something. There's something, I promise. That might be a good indicator that they just don't have anything in place, or that maybe they're not feeling as confident in their procedures as they should be. But if they're able to kind of lay out for you what the risks are, and especially this is a really good indicator that they've got it covered, how they're going to control them and how they're going to make it safe for them and for you. That's another, that's the next, if they don't say that, that's the next question, a follow-up question you could ask is, how are you going to mitigate these risks, or what are we going to need to do to make sure that we're not exposed to them as the homeowners or the clients?
Okay, yeah. So that's good. Can you give an example? Say somebody's doing a kitchen reno, they're gonna gut their kitchen, maybe take out a partition wall. Sort of what kind of an answer could they expect from a company in that case?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times too, when you think about it from a homeowner perspective, they might be thinking about the nuisance of having construction done in their home. And they can kind of go hand in hand. So in that situation, it might be something like, how will we be protected or aware of the noise exposure, any sort of like dust or particulate exposure, what are we going to do to control that? And again, it sort of can be translated to the nuisance, like keeping the place clean and not breathing in that air, and essentially, again, like the noise and what's good times to kind of have that operation happening. So those are kinds of questions that, again, they serve two purposes: the safety of it, the nuisance of it, and that might be some good, questions to start from as a homeowner or client.
Yeah, and so like you said, that starts to blend in even to customer service as well on the contractor side. So it's not just the health and safety. If you're keeping the site clean and organized and you're controlling the dust from getting everywhere, then it's safe, but it's also a better experience for the customer.
Exactly. And it's maybe not so much in residential. I think there's more value in some of the forward-facing marketing techniques. But in the commercial side, like that's a big part of how they could be marketing themselves is, their professionalism, their cleanliness, their, keeping the site clean and in order is a big indicator of the quality of work that they have. So yeah, it's absolutely a part of the customer experience.
Definitely. Okay, and so from another perspective, if employees are looking, so say there's trades and they're looking for a company to work for, what kind of stuff can they look for in terms of health and safety, in terms of the questions they can ask to make sure that they're going to a workplace that's going to be safe for them to work at?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I've seen a lot of different sides of it, and while I know and I believe that like the documentation and all the procedures and policies are very important and they are required, I would look past that for them. I would ask a little bit more about their on-the-job training, competency training, maybe if they have somebody like, especially if they're new to the industry, or the role that like they'll be shadowing or they'll be kind of being mentored by. Asking about those kinds of opportunities or processes is a really good indicator. That's like a really high quality environment to be involved in, because it's one thing to write it all down and have it in this quote unquote binder, but to sort of take action on that is the next step. That's really critical. So yeah, that on the job, like practical training, is a really great question for employees to ask or to be looking for. And, there's also like investment in training. So if there's opportunity for them to, get certificates and things like that, those are really good indicators that they're working for a company that's putting the effort in and taking action in their health and safety.
Can you elaborate on that training aspect? So how does training tie in? Because people might not necessarily consider training to be directly related to safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you make that connection?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, with your like trade specific training, I mean, there is a safety component of that, but also like becoming more skilled in the trade that you work in will increase your understanding of the tools that you use, the materials that you work with, and in turn enhance like your understanding of the risks of using them. But the other side of the training, the more practical piece, like I said, on the job training or competency, it kind of comes to this concept that we hear a lot to like, oh, safety is common sense, which is like the thing that gets me going. But the reality is that common sense is a product of your experience. So if you don't have experience in it, you're not going to understand or anticipate the circumstances. So making sure that there's as much formal or intentional training or like guidance and exposing them to different parts of the job just enhances that experience, and it's not assuming that they know anything. Like, not that they don't know anything, but not assuming that they know this component or this if they haven't been exposed to it. So by creating sort of a process where you walk through with a more experienced employee, the different tools that they're using, the different materials and the processes that they may have in place, and sort of watching them participate in it, it just really like makes sure that essentially you are checking the boxes and that they have the same understanding that everybody else does, and there's no sort of gaps in that based on assumption.
Yeah, that's definitely good. So common sense is dependent on your experience. And so you have somebody brand new to the company, a new laborer, a helper, an apprentice, and they've never done it before, and then there's no sort of basis for that common sense to form.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So you're saying the best thing is to walk them through, for them to go through it with someone else.
Yeah, and it can be, you might be bringing someone on that has 10 to 15 years of experience working in the trade, and so it doesn't need to be you teaching them necessarily, but get them to walk you through their process and compare it to the one in front of you have on your checklist or your form or your digital platform, and then kind of compare it. You may learn something from them too, which is really great opportunity to collaborate. Like I say, if they have a lot of experience or they come from a bit of a different background, so there's value from both sides, but kind of giving them that opportunity to show what they do rather than to be sitting there, in a classroom or reading or being spoken to, it's starting to sound like the Charlie Brown teacher. It's more enjoyable, and I think it's more effective because you're getting instant feedback from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So you mentioned like the checklist versus the digital platform.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm big into that, like technology and like adopting technology in the business. Can you talk about that and like what sort of systems are available?
Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a few platforms out there now. I think that there is a lot of companies that have adopted the digital electronic health and safety platforms. I think it's still a lot could be moving in that direction, and I think that's just like a generational shift essentially, or just as technology grows we can implement it in more ways. I will say in my experience it has its downfalls if it's not something that's integrated with strategy. I think as with anything, when you make changes in business, you can't eat the whole pie at once, and especially for people who tend to be more working with their hands and they want to be, inclined to build things rather than be on technology and working analytically and with writing, it can be a bit challenging. So I think the first thing that I would say if you're going to consider adopting a digital process is just like, where's your company at? What, how will that change affect them? And be really realistic about how long that process would take. Like, I would err on the side of caution and double how long you think it's going to take to implement something like that, because there's a lot of components to it. I've had experience with integrating a couple different systems into like completely new processes, moving from paper to these electronic platforms, and they have their benefits, but they're really robust. And so if your your personnel isn't quite fully 100% digital, giving them everything at one time is really overwhelming. So yeah, when I've implemented it, we just take one piece of it, we get really, really good at it, and then we slowly add another. And we just sort of make a transition rather than just being like, nope, no more paper, we're done tomorrow. Because nobody's gonna, be excited about that big of a change. And then you're not gonna have the buy-in, and it's just gonna create unnecessary barriers to your health and safety program. So it should be working for you, not against you, if you're gonna change into a digital platform, for sure.
Okay, that's a lot of great advice. So start with little chunks, not all at once. Make sure you buy in from everyone, and yeah, don't do it all at once, basically, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
Mhm.
that the cool thing with some of these platforms is that they have a lot of, like I say, components to it. And some of them might even be things that you weren't utilizing in your paper system. So I wouldn't recommend pushing those very soon at all. Make the changes with things that you're already doing rather than making a change plus essentially what employees are going to feel is that you're adding more to their plate if you're going to try and incorporate new components to your safety program at the same time, and you're just going to increase the frustration. And then just be really willing to work with people through it. I mean, truthfully, in those experiences, I've felt like more of an IT professional than a health and safety professional at times, and it's okay because when you take the time to walk people through it and really show them how to use it, how it's better for them, that's a key piece. How it's better for them, they gain your trust, and they gain they're not just pushing something at me for their benefit. It's really for everybody, and that they care about the success of everybody involved.
Okay,
So.
great. I was going to ask how to get buy-in from employees, but basically you're answering it there.
Yeah.
Okay.
You might have to get into the weeds with them in it and really just walk them through it and follow up. That's a huge piece. Checking in on how's it going, what are your frustrations with it, how can we iron those out. It's just a cycle of following up and making it better for them, and just emphasizing that and keeping that in mind for yourself as well. And just giving them the opportunity, even if it's the opportunity to complain about it, and that's okay too. Like, you can be frustrated, changes are hard, and it's health and safety is an industry that isn't gonna ever be stagnant. There's constantly changes being made. That's just the result of technology, materials, complicated things in industry are also evolving, and so we always need to be catching up in health and safety. Unfortunately, we try to be as proactive as possible, but the industry is a result of reaction. So we're trying to always keep up with the changing things in the construction and trade world and technology as well. So it's a lot to manage.
Yeah, I can imagine. So when you say the industry is more reactive, you're saying like the health and safety industry is reacting to whatever developments come up in the industry?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a little harsh, but essentially, if common sense was efficient or effective, I wouldn't have a job. We wouldn't have a OHS handbook and things like that. And so, unfortunately, it is reactive. Our goal is to be as proactive as possible and prevent, injury, illness, and loss. And so that's our primary goal, but it just isn't necessarily rooted in that. We have to kind of adapt after things are brought into the industry, whether it's new technology, new equipment, new products that people are working with. We kind of assess them as they're coming up, as they're already being implemented. So that's something that's really important to keep our thumb on, but it makes it challenging because it feels like we're always coming at people with changes, and they're like, I just got used to this, like, what are you talking about? And so we kind of have the hard job of bringing up the but and so it has its moments, but yeah, if you're just able to kind of emphasize the reason that you're there, it's more effective.
And so when you're talking about those changes, how much of that comes from like regulatory changes versus just keeping up, say, with changing technology or processes?
I would say it's probably split fairly equal.
Okay.
So as far as where those changes are coming, whether they're regulatory or just changes in technology and industry, I would say it's split fairly equal. I mean, the bottom line is for sure we need to be compliant with legislation and regulations, but there's also a nice catch-22 there where it's or industry standard, whichever is greater. So sometimes the industry moves a little faster than pushing through regulation, and so I think if companies stay on the pulse of the industry, it's a little bit more proactive actually, because they're bringing in new products, new technology, new processes a little bit faster than they're necessarily being regulated. And so there is a balance between the two, because sometimes something new might come in that doesn't quite um, have the regulation identified. It sort of creates this gray area. So you've got to, balance the both of them. But it's important to be relevant in the industry, both from, a competitive perspective, but also, holding each other accountable as industry peers as well. And I think that creates, good competition for, your clients. You're both offering the same kinds of offer, but also, again, for employees finding quality places to work, they know that they're investing in what's coming up and they're staying, relevant in how to handle it. So it's good balance.
Okay, so it's a good balance. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the future a bit. So like if you look forward, like in your industry, right?
Hmm.
So in health and safety management, like what do you see like coming up down the pipeline, like sort of changes in the future, or what's going to be the next, the next new thing that you have to deal with?
Yeah. I think the big thing is qualifying to bid on work,
Mhm.
and being able to work for certain places. So I'm just seeing that more and more. And you're seeing that with like pre qualification processes. There's these third parties like Avetta, ComplyWorks, IS Networld. Like there's several out there. And they're managing those processes for these larger companies.
Mhm.
Even as an example, the city here has their own qualification process. So it is a requirement to have, your core certification. But then on top of that, they have additional documentation that you need to submit. And that's just to qualify to get called to do work. And so I think that that's something that's going to continue to increase and become a bit of a barrier for businesses to access revenue opportunities. So I think that's a big component of it that um, it's going to trickle down. Like right now, I see that more so for the general contractor, but I'm starting to see, we need it from your trades as well. And so those companies that were being grouped with their GC, really taking care of them, which is fantastic. They're going to need to start developing stuff on their own because even general contractors are going to start having these pre-qualification processes, and that's something that I've worked on before as well. Is encouraging that if they want to work for us as well, we want them to have these documents and these processes in place. So I think that's a big thing that's going to really start to be a no-brainer. The only part that I'm not certain of is how that translates into the more residential side. I think the piece that's missing there is maybe sometimes the consistent homeowner or client awareness of that, of the value of a health and safety program or the risks as well to the clients if they don't have
Mhm.
contractors with health and safety management.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that in commercial. It's you know the systems there people are going to get asked, the companies are going to get asked for that, but not in residential, especially when they're concerned with price and how is my house going to look, and
Hmm.
less on is this company being safe.
Yeah.
So what are some things that could like change that narrative from the homeowner, from the residential perspective?
Yeah. The one piece, and now this is sort of contradictory to what I said about I don't really like to, play the fear mongering side, but there is a reality that homeowners have a responsibility because they are the owner of the property. And so making sure that, work is being done safely ultimately falls to the homeowner. I mean, there's several layers that get, put in between them and the contractor that sort of helps protect them. But realistically it is a genuine risk when you're hiring a trade or a contractor at your home, that you're responsible for the safety of that site. I don't think that's something that contractors probably love to promote. It's a little intimidating and it can be really scary if you really go down that rabbit hole of thinking. But I think just as we talked about, what are those questions that you can ask that sort of weed that out? I think just creating awareness of that really simple question of, what are the risks of the work that you do, and how can we make sure that we're going to be safe as homeowners? Just creating awareness of the value of that question would be a big piece. And I think the other side of it from the contractor perspective is emphasizing that there is value in investing that health and safety. And like I said, it shows the quality of work, it shows the professionalism, it's an enhanced customer experience, and it's enhanced employee experience. And so I think both sides of that coin, the homeowner and the contractor, have like progress they can make to impact, like, create a bigger impact in health and
Mhm.
safety, just the awareness of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're doing that right now. We're making awareness. If you're a homeowner, then ask your contractors. Are they properly trained on how to do this? Do they like are they what's their safety track record of the company?
Hmm.
What are they doing to make sure that yeah, your job site is going to be safe and it's not going to end up in somebody getting hurt? I can't imagine anything worse than you hire a company to do work on your house and a kid falls off the roof,
Yeah,
right?
that's
And
that
stuff like
wouldn't
that
feel
happens,
good.
right?
Yeah,
Like the
absolutely.
construction industry. I don't know if you have any stats, but like
I'm
injuries and fatalities in the construction industry are high.
They
It
are
happens.
high, yeah. I'm not a big stats person because I think it sort of like disconnects the personal side of it. But I know people who have been injured, and it doesn't even have to be significant. I think the one that honestly, I'm fortunate I haven't had a lot of exposure to significant loss. And I think that's really positive. And we'd like to keep it that way. But the one that gets me every time is if I hear about, especially like young people hurting their backs and that's sort of something that you carry with you forever, and it can really impact them. They may have a chronic back injury from something that happened at work, and um it just impacts them, and they're like, oh, I can't come in this week and I lose a week of wages, and things are really stressful, and so it doesn't take much for it to impact your livelihood as an employee. So that too, as an employee, even if you're young, take care of your bodies, take
Mhm.
care of yourself. That's something that, on the other side of it, if you have the ability to provide your employees with health benefits, encourage them to use it. It's great that you have it, but encourage them to use it and think of it from that proactive approach of that side. Taking care of your health and your physical fitness is really valuable to protecting yourself from injuries on the job as well.
Yeah, that's great advice. So for the workers, go do the physio, go get the massage, go to the
Mhm.
chiropractor before your back hurts. So then you're less likely to have those
Yeah,
injuries.
exactly. That's a proactive approach for sure. You can access those services without having an injury, and they can likely prevent you from, some discomfort and pain, and again, losing out on being able to work.
Mhm. So is that part of your scope when you come in to work with, like, say, a small residential company? Are you advising them, like, as part of what you provide? Hey, go make sure you have adequate benefits for your employees, and we're going to tell your employees to go and use it. Like,
Yeah,
can you talk just like a little more, expand on the scope of what you provide?
yeah, for sure. And that's definitely a piece that we can talk about. I kind of group that into like a fit for work program. And a lot of times we think about that as whether it's under the influence or fatigue or stress. But yeah, you guys are using your bodies to do the work that you do, and so taking care of them is really important. And like I say, proactive is the preference. And so, yeah, talking to business owners about employee benefits and giving them not only encouraging them to use it, but giving them the time to use it. Because a lot of the times you need to take off, an hour or so from work, or leave early, or come in late to be able to use that. And again, I think it really impacts that culture piece. Like, oh, they care about my well-being, and they want me to, utilize these benefits and take care of myself. And it just again is that full circle, positive environment. Um, I think culture can be like a really, I don't know, big word that nobody really knows what exactly
Right.
that means. And so the way that I personally like to define it is culture is a result of what you do or don't do as a leader. And it's because people end up trusting what you do or don't do. So if they trust that you're not going to do what you say you will, it's a poor impact on culture. And so when they see you taking action and implementing the things that you say you care about, it creates a more positive culture. And yeah, it's just a more positive work environment. So I like to talk to the business owners, the managers, the supervisors, the leaders at the company about, yeah, having that impact, and not having, whether they, maybe in the past have had the attitude of like, it's safety, we have to do it, or I have to have this meeting. Like, let's have a really positive attitude about it so that we do care and our employees see that. If we go in there, we are all, oh, another safety meeting. It's just going to impact everybody negatively, and they're not going to believe that it's actually important, and you won't get the value of it either. You know, yeah, there's requirements for audits and qualifications to have, meetings and inspections and fill out the forms, but there's also value to what you're talking about in those meetings. So, you know, make it worth the while, if you're going to put in the effort anyways, and open that door for collaboration for employees. That's my favorite thing to do is, how's it going on site? What's frustrating you?
Mhm.
What's going really well? And having that, open door engagement. Because like I say, it's not fun and it's not impactful to come to site and be like, you're not doing your job right, behind a book or a binder.
Yeah.
They're not going to change what they're doing.
Yeah.
But if you go out and ask questions and create collaboration, there's a lot more impact.
Mhm. That's great. So I like that from the management you get a trickle down of, okay, we're going to go into these meetings or into these changes because we want to, not because we have to.
Hmm.
And you mentioned in another conversation we had that a lot of the smaller companies don't realize that they should be doing that until something happens, until there's an
Hmm.
accident, an incident.
Yeah.
Um, so what can you do, to foster that change before the problems come up, before there's an accident?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is just drawing attention to the growth and how it could create that positive impact throughout the operations. And I think, a lot of the time safety is viewed as an added thing, like an extra thing. Like, sometimes I have to just sit there and grin and bear it when I have somebody be like, I don't get this. I have to sit at the end of my day and fill out this form and it's on my time. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, so many things are wrong with that. Like, first of all, it shouldn't be on your time. It's part of the work that you do. Like, we want to pay you for this. And second of all, it should be at the beginning. It should be throughout, implemented in your processes. So I think a piece that really helps is giving them workable, solutions for how to integrate it into their work. So, I recently worked with a very small business, and we're working, together on getting their core certification. And the owner was worried about adding another thing to the supervisor's plate to get him to do site safety inspections. And I said, well, what does he do now on site? Like, what is his routine like? And so we talked with him, and he goes, well, like, I go on the second day and I do a quality inspection, make sure that they're cleaning up. And I was like, great. What do you use for that? Oh, I have a checklist on here. I'm like, perfect. Let's add a couple items to that. You're already going to site that day. You're already walking around. You're looking for these things. Let's just add a few components that implement health and safety into that process that you're already doing. And it's not an added layer to your job. You don't have to go out again or pull up a different form or whatever the case may be. It's part of what he's already doing. And it was a lot easier for him to, yeah, I can, look for a few more things while I'm already on site. It's an easy thing to add when you look at it from an operations perspective.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so it's a simple integration to what's already going on. So then
Hmm.
that's very makes it very easy to implement.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes it's more complicated than that, but taking those baby steps first and seeing the benefit of it and sort of getting the buy-in there, it gives you a little bit more wiggle room when you're like, okay, now this one is a little bit newer and it might be an added layer, but here's the benefits of it and why we're doing it. And,
Mhm.
being able to talk about it again rather than just tell them you have to do this is going to get you a lot farther.
Yeah, nice. That's great. Well, great conversation. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Elizabeth Lecerf, Lecerf. I don't know why that one always doesn't come across right. And my company is Safety Comply. We are on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for
Awesome.
coming on. It was,
Yeah,
it
thank
was,
you
it
so
was a
much for
pleasure to have
having me.
you.
I appreciate it. It was great.